You're a producer. Right now, you're shopping around for different plugins to find the one that best suits your needs. Maybe you've heard of RC-20, maybe you currently use RC-20, and maybe you've seen that Curtis King just put out a plugin called Tapeboy, and maybe you're trying to figure out which one you should go for, maybe which one's better, or which one will suit your needs the best. My name is El Marquis, musician, rapper, record producer, unashamed crash follower, and today we are going to compare RC-20 with Tapeboy.
El Marquis Productions.
Hello fellow bedroom producers, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time seeing me, I make videos that give tips to independent artists and producers all around the world. I also make tutorial videos on Logic Pro 10. I break down my beat making and songwriting process, and also I do product reviews. So if any of that interests you, I need you to do me a really quick favor. Go down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so that way you'll be notified whenever I make more videos like this, and you'll help other people with similar interests as you see more videos like this. Got that out the way? Bet. Let's get into the video. One quick thing before we get into the main topic of this video, big thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this channel throughout the month of May. If you don't know who DistroKid is, don't worry about it. Later on in this video, we're going to take a really quick commercial break to talk about DistroKid, highlight one of their features, and let you know why you should consider signing up for a membership with them. I only talk about products, services, and companies that I find valuable to the producer community at large, and also things that I can stand behind and use myself. So we'll get into that later in the video. If you regularly watch different cookup videos on YouTube, you probably have seen RC-20 at one point. If you listen to a lot of lo-fi music, you've definitely heard this plugin used on some of your favorite songs. Basically, what RC-20 is designed to do is to add a vintage character to your audio sources. And Curtis King recently put out his plugin called Tapeboy, which serves a similar purpose to RC-20. RC-20 and Tapeboy are oftentimes compared to each other just because they have a really similar purpose in mind, which is to give your audio sources a more vintage style feel. Now, while they do have similar controls and serve similar purposes, they do sound different. I personally find them both very useful while I'm making beats, and I really want to highlight the features and show you why you may like one or the other, or maybe both. So now I'm going to go switch over to the computer and we're going to compare RC-20 to Tapeboy. So now we're in Logic Pro 10 and I have Tapeboy pulled up here to the left and RC-20 here to the right. And basically I want to use this video to compare the two plugins together, highlight the similarities, highlight their differences, and give my opinion on who one plugin may be better for than the other. So the way I may compare these two plugins together is Tapeboy is kind of like an iPhone, where RC-20 is more like a Samsung Galaxy. iPhones are designed to be simple, user-friendly, and it's still a high-quality device even though it's not super customizable, whereas a Galaxy phone has really similar features and you can go more in depth on certain features as well, and is an overall much more customizable experience. That's how I personally would describe these plugins in a nutshell. They have really similar features. For example, both Tapeboy and RC-20 have the Wobble parameter, as well as this ducking parameter on the Tapeboy. The magnetic section on RC-20 serves a similar function. And I'll go through and highlight the similarities and differences between the different parameters. The first thing I think I should go over is price. So if we go over to XLN Audio's website, RC-20 is available for $99.95. If you go over to slapexperts.com, you can pick up Tapeboy for $39.95. So I like them both and I would actually recommend getting them both, especially if you are a producer who happens to make lo-fi or hip-hop style music. However, if budget is a concern for you, that $39.95 price point is probably more attractive than $99.95. They both serve similar purposes and functions, so if you are someone who's starting out, or maybe if you're just on a tighter budget, you may want to start with Tapeboy at first. So now let's get into the actual sound of these plugins. So the audio source that I'm using is a MIDI from my free loop kit Old Photos, which is available to download for free on lmarquisproductions.com. Old Photos comes with 5 different loops, which also include the trackouts as well as the MIDI. So I dragged out one of the MIDI files and I put it on a piano from Kontakt, just so we can use a sound that's clean and doesn't already have effects on it, so we can really hear what RC-20 and Tapeboy are doing. So as a matter of fact, I'll bypass both of these plugins so you can hear what this loop sounds like without any effects on it. Right now, there's nothing on that piano. I even bypassed the reverb that's coming from Kontakt. So now let's open the plugins back up. The first section that I want to compare is the Wobble. So we see on Tapeboy, you have this Wobble knob right here, and when you click on it and you turn it up, basically that increases the intensity of the wobble, and then you can turn it down and that decreases the intensity of the wobble. And that's pretty much all that there is to this control. Whereas if you go over here to RC-20, you can do the same thing with this knob right here, but you can also control the actual sound of the wobble with these different parameters. So basically on Tapeboy, you can control the intensity of the wobble, but you can't really control what the wobble sounds like. On RC-20, you can control how much of that wobble you want on your audio source, but then also you can go through these different parameters and control the sound of it. And I really just want to focus on comparing the two plugins together, so I don't want to go into too much detail on what all these different controls do, but I do quickly want to compare the sound between the two. So the first thing I'll do is actually use Tapeboy to show you what you can do with the wobble effect. So as I turn it up, it becomes more apparent. Basically what the wobble is doing is it's detuning the piano. So the more I turned it up, the more you can really hear it, and that's really all that you can do with the wobble on Tapeboy. It's really quick and easy to add the wobble effect. Now here on RC-20, you can get a similar sounding effect, but you have more control over it. So let's slow down that wobble, make them a little bit more intense. I also can turn it this way, make it sound really crazy. Turn up the rate, make it sound even more intense. Turn up this as well. So that's a bit distracting, so I'm gonna turn it back down. It's still pretty intense, so we turn the rate back down. Make it a little bit more intense. Add the stereo effect, so you can, it's kind of like a chorus effect, which still is a bit distracting. So I'll turn that back off actually. Let's even turn the flex up a little bit. So just adding like different artifacts. And now you also can turn the mix down, so you can set a balance between the unprocessed signal and the processed signal. It sounds kind of like a chorus effect right now. Turn this down. Make that more subtle. So as you heard, there are tons of different options that you have with the wobble effect with RC-20, whereas with Tapeboy, not really as many options. But as you also could hear, as I turn the wobble up on Tapeboy, even at the most intense setting, it still sounded pretty good. But with RC-20, if I turn it up to a really intense level and I kept messing around with the different parameters, it's pretty easy to make it sound messed up and unusable. So in terms of ease of use, Tapeboy definitely takes the win right there. But if you really want to go in and dive into deep detail to get the exact sound that you're looking for, that's where RC-20 may be better for you. Now let's compare the ducking section on Tapeboy to the magnetic section on RC-20. Basically what ducking is on Tapeboy is it's an automatic sidechain effect. So depending on which interval you choose, your audio will duck on that interval. Magnetic does something kind of similar. Those two sections aren't really exactly the same because the magnetic section on RC-20 actually adds different artifacts as well. But you also are able to drop out the audio. Big difference between ducking on Tapeboy and the dropout section on RC-20 is that it's a lot more random on RC-20. So it doesn't duck at a specific interval, it just ducks randomly. Whereas on Tapeboy, it's stuck on whichever interval you choose to duck it at. So let's actually compare the two sounds together. Let's start off with Tapeboy. So that's on a whole note right now. That's really intense. Let's take it up to half note. Let's take it to a quarter note. So that's how you can really hear it. Now this is more subtle. It's like a record player going in and out. So now let's hear what the magnetic section on RC-20 sounds like. So hear that dropout right there. It was like on a random interval. Turn it up a bit more. Turn up the dropouts. Let's mess with this. So if you had to choose between those two sections, it really would depend on how do you want your audio to have that type of ducking effect. Would you rather have your audio duck on a specific interval, like a whole note, half note, or a quarter note? Or would you like it to be a bit more random, as well as having additional controls over what that sound is? Because as you heard with these different parameters, it made the ducking and wear and tear on your audio source different, a bit more random. I heard it even pan between the headphones. So really, just like with the wobble section, it's pretty hard to make it sound bad on Tapeboy, but you're also more limited in terms of what you can do with the sound. Whereas on RC-20, while you can add more detail to the sound, it also is really easy to mess it up and make it sound horrible if you don't know what you're doing. If you're watching this video, you're probably a producer, a beat maker, an instrumental artist, or a combination of all the above. So if you make music, you probably want people to hear it, and if you want to do this as a career, you probably want to get paid for it. This is where DistroKid comes in. DistroKid is a distribution company that will work with you so you can release your music on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Tidal, Amazon, TikTok, Instagram, pretty much anywhere and everywhere that people listen to music. Not only will they upload your music to all the major music platforms, but they'll also allow you to get paid for it. If you've never heard of music distribution before, you may be thinking,
oh my gosh, that sounds really cool, but it's probably really expensive, isn't it?
wrong. DistroKid will actually allow you to upload an unlimited amount of music to all the major music streaming platforms for a starting price of $19.99 per year. Not per day, not per week, not per month, just $19.99 a year. So if you're a producer right now who mainly uploads beats to YouTube and BeatStars, and maybe you want to create an additional source of revenue for you by uploading your beats to Spotify and Apple Music so you can get paid every time someone listens to your music, I highly encourage you to sign up with DistroKid. As a matter of fact, if you go to the description of this video, I actually left the link where you can sign up with DistroKid and get a 7% discount off of your first year with them. For full transparency, if you do use that link to sign up with DistroKid, yes, you will get that discount. I also will get a commission on that sale. So if you do enjoy the content that I make on this channel, and if you would like to support what I do, I would greatly appreciate it if you use that link to sign up with DistroKid. Like I said earlier in this video, I will never promote a product, a service, or a business that I don't stand by myself. And if you talk to any of the artists who I've worked with over the years, they've definitely heard me mention DistroKid to them more than once. And most of the artists who I do production for actually do use DistroKid as well. Whether you're a producer who's on the fence of releasing their beats as instrumental music, or if you are ready and you would like to start monetizing your beats in a different way, I would highly encourage you to sign up with DistroKid so you can upload an unlimited amount of music to all major music streaming platforms. So now let's go over to one of my favorite sections, which is called Noise on RC-20 and Lo-Fi on Tapeboy. So basically the purpose of the Lo-Fi and noise sections on the respective plugins is it has a bit of ambience to your audio source. On RC-20 and other similar style plugins, you can add a vinyl noise, or a radio noise, or a tape noise, which is cool, it's usable, but maybe you don't want a vinyl noise. Maybe you want to add a different type of ambience just to switch it up and give your tracks a different feel. That's where I think Tapeboy shines, because you can add different sounds such as rain noise, street, vinyl, radio hiss, fire, which might be my favorite, sub blue, which is like an airplane, cafe, or heavy rain, as well as storm noise. So with Tapeboy, you have more options in terms of sounds. You also can control the intensity or how loud the sound is right here. With this volume slider right here, RC-20 is pretty much the same. Just you can choose how loud your noise is by adjusting this knob. Also on Tapeboy, if you want to have the noise section stop playing when your audio source stops playing, just click this knob right here. Or if you want to keep the ambience noise throughout your entire song, just turn it off. Now on RC-20, you can do the same thing with the follow section actually, just by turning up the intensity on that. And you also have the option to do the opposite, which is have the noise duck while the audio is playing. So for example, while the piano is playing, you wouldn't hear the ambient noise, and then as it stopped, you would hear it kick in. And also a parameter that RC-20 has that Tapeboy doesn't is you can affect the tone of the noise. So as you turn it to the left, it'll make the noise sound darker and highlight the lower frequencies, and then it will do the opposite when you turn it to the right. It will highlight the higher frequencies. So enough about talking about this, let's actually just compare the sounds between the two. So let's go to Tapeboy. Here's the rain sound. Turn it up so you can hear it. Just make it more subtle. That around here is a level that I would personally use if I just wanted to be more so in the background. And now I'll go to the different sounds as well. now I'll go over to RC-20 and I'll go through the different sounds, and then also I'll show you what we can make it sound like with the tone knob. So vinyl 1 is usually the default sound. Let's turn it up so you can really hear it. So on here, all these are different vinyl or record player noises. Which all sound really good. Some are just more intense than others. So now let's do it to the tone knob. So I'm just turning it up a bit louder just so you can really hear it. As I turn the tone knob to the left, highlights the lower frequencies. Turn to the right, shows the higher frequencies. Also, you can go over here to the flux, and that adds different, and that makes it sound more random and adds different artifacts to it. Right there, that sounds kind of crazy. That's more subtle. So the main takeaway, once again, is they both sound really cool. If you want to move away from vinyl style noises, and if you want different tones like rain noise, for example, or street noise, for example, which aren't really common ambience effects that you would find in other similar styles of plugins, Tapeboy may be better for you. Now, if you do like vinyl noises, and also if you want more control over the noise itself, that's where RC-20 may suit you more, because here on Tapeboy, all you can really do is control which sound that you want to use and then how loud you want it to be. On RC-20, you can choose which sound you want it to be, how loud you want it to be, and then also you can affect the tone and the different artifacts of it as well. Both of them are really usable, and just like with every other effect, other than just making it sound too loud, it's really hard to make it sound bad on Tapeboy, whereas on RC-20, if you don't know what you're doing with the knobs, it's pretty easy to make something that sounds bad and unusable. But if you do know what you're doing, and if you don't mind spending a little bit more time on really dialing in the tone that you want, then this may be better for you. So now we're going to go over to the 8-bit section as well as the digital section on RC-20. So basically the digital section on RC-20 adds 8-bit character to your sound, which of course the 8-bit section on Tapeboy does as well. For the 8-bit section on Tapeboy is pretty similar to the Lo-Fi section, as you can choose different characters or different styles of 8-bit distortion and then control the intensity of it. On RC-20, basically you can dial in the tone of the 8-bit distortion that you would like, and also you can make it focus in on specific frequencies. So for example, by default, it affects all of the frequencies. If I only wanted to affect the low end, I can drag this knob up down here, drag it down, and now it's only affect between 20 hertz and 146 hertz. Now if I wanted to affect the high end, I can just drag it up, and let's see, so I can make this a bit more narrow, and now that's like mids to highs right there. Or if I wanted to affect the mids, the highs, and leave the lows alone, I also have the option to do that. And of course I can mix it in with the unprocessed signal, and then also I can affect how smooth the 8-bit distortion sounds. On Tapeboy, you can't really dial in the tone specifically, you just kind of just go through the different characters and then you decide how loud you want it or how subtle you want it. So now let's go through and compare the different tones that you can get with each respective plugin. Characters. Now let's turn it up just so you can really hear what it sounds like. So actually, here's what it would sound like just subtly mixed in. And here's it a lot louder. And I'll keep it intense so you can hear what's going on. So once again, with all the other knobs, it's really hard to make it sound bad other than just turning it up way too intense, if that's not what the song is calling for. So you can choose between the sound that you want and then just choose how intense you want it to be, which makes it really quick and easy to dial in a tone that you like and want to use. Now let's go over to RC-20 and show you how you can get a similar tone and then also can customize it a bit more. And so just really driving this point home, on Tapeboy, it's really hard to make it sound bad other than just if you just turn it up too loud for the context of your song. And there's not really much you can do in terms of shaping the tone. You're just kind of just stuck with the different preset tone that it has installed in the plugin, and then you just choose how much of it you want. So if you're looking for something that's really quick and easy to load up and already sounds good, that's where Tapeboy shines. And now if you listen to what I was doing with RC-20, I could really go in and dial in the exact tone that I want in more detail. So as I turned up the digital knob, it's similar to choosing between the different characters on Tapeboy, but then I can go in and really dial in the tone by sliding the rate/bits knob over here, choosing how smooth I want it to be, choosing which frequencies I want to affect, and then also being able to either have it be all the way up intense, mix it in, and also having it fluctuate with the flux knob. So if you want to add some 8-bit distortion to your audio source, and if you want to quickly add an effect that's really hard to mess up, that's where Tapeboy shines. RC-20, if you really want to dial in a really specific tone, if you want to spend a little bit more time on sound design, and if you really know what you're doing, go with RC-20. It's also easier to mess things up, which is why I think that if you don't want to go through and figure out what all these different parameters do, that's where Tapeboy would shine. Now let's go over to the filter section. So of course both Tapeboy and RC-20 do have the filter section, which is over here on Tapeboy, and then it's over here on RC-20. And just like with every other parameter, you can go in a bit more in depth on RC-20, whereas on Tapeboy, it's still there, you just can't really dial in a really specific tone. And by that I mean, on Tapeboy you can roll off the low end and you can roll off the high end, but the curves are already predetermined. So if you want to roll off the low end or the high end at a different curve, you're pretty much just stuck with how it's already programmed in the plugin. Whereas on RC-20, you have two different slopes for the low end as well as the high end, and then also you can increase and decrease the tone. So if I drag it down over here, that makes it sound lower. If I drag it to the right, it makes it sound brighter. And also we have these two different curves as well, which also can affect the tone. So now let's go through and show you what you can do with both plugins. So let's roll off the low end. That's it really high. And that's also as far as you can go with that. Let's drag that back down. Drag and adjust the high end. So cutting off the high end. Let's try combining them both. So it's really easy to adjust the tone on Tapeboy. You just drag it lower or higher with both knobs until you find the tone that you want, and it's still very usable. Even when you drag them all the way up like this to as far as they can go, it's still a usable tone. It doesn't sound bad, it doesn't sound harsh, it doesn't sound annoying. You may not want this specific tone, of course, depending on the sound that you're going for your song or your beat, but that's definitely usable and it doesn't sound bad whatsoever. Now let's hear what it sounds like on RC-20. So one of the first things I noticed is that you actually can adjust the filter to whatever frequency you want it to be, whereas on Tapeboy it just stops at 1K. So if you really wanted to, you could even cut off all the frequencies. And that's for the high cut as well. Let's play with the different curves. Now let's also affect the tone. So let's make it like really bright. Now let's make it darker. So once again, the main thing between these two sections again is that on Tapeboy, if you want to dial in a filter, you want to cut off the frequencies and have a really small chance of making it sound bad, that's where Tapeboy shines. On RC-20, you can do the same job, except if you don't know what you're doing, you can make it sound horrible. As you can see, took this all the way up, that pretty much cut the sound completely off. And if you make the tone knob really intense one way or the other, on the piano it didn't sound horrible, but it didn't sound too good either. So with other audio sources, it could definitely sound a bit crazier, especially if you have some type of EQ or some really intense effect in the VST instrument itself. So all in all, the filter section on Tapeboy, really hard to mess up. RC-20, not too hard to mess it up if you don't know what you're doing, but if you do know what you're doing, you can dial in a really nice tone. Let's compare the mix knob on Tapeboy to the magnitude knob on RC-20. They both do the exact same thing. There's really not much to compare here. Magnitude on RC-20 is pretty much its version of the mix knob. So basically what these both do is you can dial in a tone and then you can mix in the tone of the plugin with the unprocessed signal of your audio source. The same thing for both. There's honestly not really much of a difference between the two, but I'm just gonna pick a preset on both of them and then I'll just adjust the mix knob and the magnitude knob on them both just so you can hear what they sound like. So first let's go over to Tapeboy. So this is the full effect at 100%. Let's dial it back. So that's the dry signal mixed with the wet signal. It's giving like a chorusy effect with what's dialed in right now. So here's all the way off. So that's nothing. Now drag it up a little bit. Cool. Not too much to talk about right there. Pretty straightforward. Let's go over to RC-20. That's 100% the processed signal. Let's dial it back. So that's all the way off. Let's bring it in a little bit. And it's all the way there. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. There's not really that much to talk about. If you notice what's going on in the plugin itself on RC-20, you may notice that the knobs down here, they're just being affected by the magnitude knob, which is pretty much what the dry and wet knob is doing. It just shows you how much the effect that you like to blend in. And that's what's going on with Tapeboy as well. You're just mixing the dry and wet signals together. So not really much to talk about right there. They both do pretty much the same thing. And then of course the last features to directly compare with each other are the presets. There's not too much detail to go over to them right now. Just know that they both have presets that you can choose from. So you can quickly just go through and browse through and find the sound that you're looking for. Click on it, load it up. Click on it, load it up right there. And on both you can save your own presets as well. One thing that on Tapeboy is that you have the option to rename the presets if you would like. RC-20, I don't think that you can actually. Let me just see. No, I don't think that you can actually rename them on RC-20. And I do see that you also can choose which preset you would like to be your default preset right there in RC-20. Doesn't look like you can do that directly in Tapeboy. The workaround this for Logic Pro users, of course, is to go over here and click Save as Default. And you can do that with both plugins. I haven't used any other DAWs other than Logic, so I'm not sure if this is readily available in other DAWs, but if it is, then that's not really that big of a deal. But either way, main takeaway is they both have tons of usable presets that you can use just to go through and use as some quick inspiration and then just go through and customize them as needed. So actually, let's just go through a few presets on both plugins right now. Start off with Tapeboy. I also can click over here. If I know the exact name of the preset that I want, I can just go through and click on it. And then adjust as needed. Cool, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go over to RC-20 and go through some of their presets. As necessary. So presets, really straightforward. If you want to start off with something that's really usable just to get some quick inspiration, you can just go through the presets and then you can adjust them as needed. So those are all the different comparisons between the parameters that are really similar to each other. Now let's go over what each plugin has that the other does not. So starting off with RC-20, the RC-20 has a distortion section as well as a space section, which is actually the same thing as reverb, whereas Tapeboy does not. So if you want to add in some really pleasant distortion, you can do that on RC-20. Not going to go into that into great detail. I'll just show you what it sounds like. Pretty straightforward. If you want to add some distortion, you can go through and click through different tones, and then of course select which frequencies you want to affect, dial in how much of it you want, and then also mix in the dry and wet signals together. Pretty straightforward. Same thing with space. So space is a reverb. You can control how long the reverb lasts, and you can delay it from kicking in immediately. You also can affect which frequencies that the reverb is on, and you can choose to make it stereo or mono, and then of course add in the little artifacts with the flux knob. So let's hear what that sounds like. So cool, they're both usable. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on them. So basically, if you want distortion and reverb built into the plugin, RC-20 may be the better option for you. Tapeboy, don't really have that on there, so you'll have to pull up additional plugins to add some distortion or reverb to your source. For me personally, I don't really use the reverb on RC-20 very often. There are other reverbs that I have that I personally prefer over the reverb in RC-20, so I honestly don't really use it that much. It still is good, it still is usable, so I definitely wouldn't advise other people to not use it if you do like the sound that you get from it. I just happen to have other reverbs from other plugins that I prefer a lot more than the one in RC-20, but it's definitely not bad. Another parameter that RC-20 has that Tapeboy doesn't that I actually like is the width knob. So with the width knob, I can make the audio source sound wider, or I can make it sound more narrow or more mono. So here's what it sounds like at 0%. Let's make it sound mono. Which on this audio source, not really too much stereo effect going on anyway, so you can't really hear it too well. So on this audio source, you can't really hear it too well because I guess the preset that I chose wasn't really to stereo in the first place. But depending on the source that you do use it on, you can make the source sound a lot wider, or you can make it sound mono. And you don't have the option on Tapeboy. So now let's go over to Tapeboy. So now on Tapeboy, the one section that we did not go over is the warm section. So basically the warm section is like adding a little bit of a filter. It's a dynamic filter that just moves along with the music. And then of course you can choose which warm preset that you want to use and then adjust how much of it you want in there. If you want it to be really intense or if you want it to be a bit more subtle. So let's go through and hear what this sounds like. So basically it's just rolling off the high end, but then it's also dynamic, so it has a bit of movement to it. So that's cool. It's like a little auto filter because basically what's going on is it's rolling off the high end of your audio source, but it's also not like static. It's moving a bit. So it adds a bit of movement to your audio source rather than just being flat like this. So rather than just rolling off the low end or the high end like this, it's kind of like doing a motion like that, where it's instead of just being static and just staying right there, it's just moving a bit like this. So it just doesn't stay in one place, and it just makes the audio source sound more active, more lively, and just give it more movement. RC-20 does not have a dynamic warm parameter on it, so if this parameter really stands out to you, and if that's more valuable to you than distortion or reverb, then you may want to go with Tapeboy. Another cool thing about Tapeboy as well is that it has an undo and redo button built into the plugin itself. This honestly isn't that big of a deal because in Logic at least, you can undo and redo in the Logic plugin itself. If the DAW that you use does not have an undo and redo button, then maybe this could be really valuable to you. Another really cool thing about Tapeboy is that you actually get rewarded for using the plugin. So if you go over here to the achievements section, if you use Tapeboy consecutively for 7 days, 15 days, or 30 days, you'll be rewarded for free sounds and for discount codes for slapexperts.com, which if you're a fan of the site, that's awesome. I personally like the sounds and plugins from Slap Experts, so for me, this is really cool. If you're not really a fan of Slap Experts, first of all, you're missing out. Get hip. But also then this may not be super valuable to you. I haven't seen any other plugins that reward you for using it, so I think this is really cool. And I think it would be really cool to see where this could go in the future and see if maybe other plugin companies will adopt something similar. And of course with RC-20, you won't get awarded for just directly using it. So that may be small to some people. If you care about the achievements, that's awesome. I personally do. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be really cool to see how this evolves with Slap Experts, and then also to see if other people start taking this idea and flipping it in their own direction as well. And the last feature I want to highlight, it's not really that big of a deal. It's just something I thought of that I just want to bring attention to, is that you're able to turn on or off the animations for Tapeboy, which if you turn them off, that will save on CPU. I really haven't found either of the plugins to be really intense on CPU anyways, so that's why I said it's not really that big of a deal. But if you are someone who wants to maximize the amount of CPU that your computer is using, it's dope that you have the option to turn off the animations on Tapeboy. RC-20 don't believe that there's a way to turn off the animations, so if you do want to maximize the amount of CPU that you're using, Tapeboy will give you the option to conserve it a little bit more by being able to turn off the animations. RC-20 does not. However, like I did say, I haven't really noticed them taking up that much CPU in the first place, so it may not be that big of a deal to you, but there you go. Just wanted to highlight it just in case that's something that you do care about. Alright, so now we highlighted all of the similarities and differences between the two plugins. So now what's the overall takeaway? What's my opinion on these two plugins, and who do I think each plugin is better suited for? So first of all, I really like both of these plugins. For me personally, it's not an either or decision. For me, it's just whatever I'm feeling for the day is going to be which plugin I want to use. Now, of course, other people may not be like that, and they may want to choose one or the other just to own. If you can't afford both, I honestly would recommend getting both. But if you don't want to have as many decisions, if you're more so of a plugin minimalist, like myself as well, and maybe you don't want to use too many plugins and you want to choose one over the other, or maybe if you're just starting out and you have a smaller budget and you really can only afford to choose one or the other, then here's what I would recommend. If you're a producer who's just starting out, if you don't want to be confused with too many different settings, or if you want to be able to quickly dial in a tone and be pretty confident that you're not going to mess it up, that's where Tapeboy shines. Tapeboy is a more affordable plugin as it's only half the price of RC-20, and all the effects sound really good, and it's really hard to mess any of them up because it doesn't give you a whole lot of parameters to affect, which is totally fine because as you've seen with different sections such as the Wobble, for example, I could turn this up all the way on Tapeboy and it really doesn't sound bad. It sounds really usable. If I go over to RC-20 and I turn up the noise all the way and I keep messing with different knobs, if I don't know what I'm doing, it's going to sound really bad and annoying. But if I do know what I'm doing, I can dial in a tone that is really usable, but it does take up a little bit more time. So if you are a beginner and you just want to be able to quickly dial in tones that are really usable and sound really good, that's where Tapeboy shines. If you want to spend a bit more time dialing in the tone that you would like to use, then that's where you may prefer RC-20. So basically, if your top priority is ease of use as well as affordability, Tapeboy. And if you're on a slightly bigger budget and if you want to go a bit more in depth with the sound and tone that you have, that's where RC-20 comes in. You are able to go through the presets and quickly pull up a sound that is usable, so you don't have to go super in depth and dial in the tone that you would like if you are more so of a preset style user. But if you do want a bit more control over your sound, that's where RC-20 shines. Once again, they're both really usable. I like them both. I'm going to continue using them both. I'm not deleting one or the other. I already paid for them, so I'm not going to delete either of them. And if you are a hip-hop or lo-fi style producer, or really any producer who wants to get a warm vintage style tone, I definitely highly recommend that you get Tapeboy and RC-20. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you've seen today, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll never miss when I upload a new video. Also, I've left links in the description of this video so you can check out RC-20, Tapeboy, and DistroKid, as well as my free loop kit that I used as an example in this video. Also, be sure to visit my website, lmarquisproductions.com, where you'll be able to check out my music, my beats, my sample kits, my merchandise, and my mixing, mastering, and consulting services. Now go down in the comment section below and let me know, which plugin do you prefer? Is RC-20 the king? Did Tapeboy kill off RC-20? Do you use a combination of these plugins? Do you not like either of them at all? Are you just the coolest guy in the world and you actually own vintage hardware so you don't even need to use plugins? Let me know in the comment section below. My name is L Marquis Productions. God bless.